I'm looking at it right now in the engine room of ComScore Movies, $424.76 million for the 5 days. That's over $100 million more than the previous record. Welcome to the Thanksgiving podcast for Ticket to Ride with your co-hosts, Paul DeGarabedian, that's me, Thaddeus Bouchard, and Mike Polydorus.
Hello, Paul. Hello,
Hey,
Thaddeus. How's everybody doing?
We're great. Just
okay.
sort of clean from Thanksgiving.
I was going to say, okay, how was Thanksgiving? Did everybody have a good one?
I worked.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, Thanksgiving weekend, but Thanksgiving on Thursday you worked as well, Paul?
Yes, I always work.
Yeah.
That's all I do.
I said this to Paul yesterday, and that is, I think the last 4 days, Paul has been the busiest man in our industry. I have seen him on numerous television shows. He's been quoted everywhere I read about the weekend. The lead quote comes from Paul. So, Paul, you're doing yeoman's work out there.
I do it for you guys. I do it for Ticket to Ride. And yeah, I was able to do Bloomberg TV, Yahoo Finance on air, the Today Show, NBC News, twice NBC News now, and a bunch of other stuff, Wall Street Journal, CNN, CNBC, all the usual suspects. It was really great. And it just shows you how when the industry is booming, the focus shifts to our industry, which is a good
I was
thing.
going to say, what they had something they wanted to talk about?
They actually did. I guess it was that enormous Thanksgiving, which, Mike, I got to give you full credit. I said to Mike, Thaddeus, that maybe we get to 300 million for the 5 days and maybe come close to the previous record, if we're lucky, of 315.6 million, driven by Ralph Breaks the Internet with 84.75 million for the 5 days back in 2018. And Mike's like, no, Paul, you're low. And I'm like, okay, what do you think? And it pretty much, Polydorus nailed it. He nailed it.
Mike was holding a royal flush. He had it in his hand, and no one else could see it.
I wish I could say it was a royal flush, but really, and I was telling Thaddeus before we started recording, what I normally do is I put a chart together, and you use the traditional ups and downs of each day. So I have a 5-day chart. And in the morning, pretty much nailed Moana and Wicked based on where the hourlies were. You could look at it and it's like, wow, they're having, Moana's going to look like very close to 60 million. And then if you played it out with the normal animated Thanksgiving ups and downs over the course of the weekend, I texted Paul and a couple of other distribution friends. I'm like, I got Moana like right around 210, or so. And, everybody was like, no. And then, of course, Disney, and I don't blame them one bit, was, playing very conservative at 175, and they held to
75 plus, yeah.
But I understand that, because coming from a studio side, and I've been on this where you're looking at it and you're assuming you're going to get the ups and downs of the way the bounces work, and it doesn't work that way. And you've gone out and said, we're going to do X. And then, your drop was bigger than you anticipated. So X becomes X minus whatever. And literally what you do is you take a win and you turn it into a loss because you're constantly, playing with it. So Disney, in my mind, did the absolute correct thing. And that was they kept expectations conservative. They felt very comfortable they would get to the 175. I think all of us who kind of look at a normal, schedule, and by the way, there was nothing normal about this at all. But when you look at like the typical ups and downs, you were like, I think I told you early, Paul, that looks like about 410 to me for the weekend.
Yeah,
and I even exceeded that.
And the final numbers are for the 5 days domestically, Wednesday through Sunday. According to our ComScore data, I'm looking at it right now in the engine room of ComScore Movies, $424.76 million for the 5 days. That's over $100 million more than the previous record, like I mentioned earlier, set in 2018. Moana 2, $225.4 million for the 5 days. Wicked, $7 million for the 5. And Gladiator 2, $44.3 million. But check this out. Red 1, $18.5 million at number 4. It had a very minimal drop, a very minimal drop. And that just shows that to have Red 1 out there, we focus on those top 3 movies, But Red One was an important factor as well, doing its part to build that record-breaking box.
Well, and I wanted to bring up Red One because Red One and Moana 2 have one thing in common. And what is that, Paul? Do you?
It's a gentleman called Dwayne Johnson.
Well, it's, by the way, that wasn't even the common denominator, but you're right. I was thinking of, not only is it Dwayne Johnson, but both of those movies, when they were originally greenlit, were greenlit to go directly to streaming. Both Amazon with Red One, Disney with Moana 2, at some point during the process, looked at it and said, we should go theatrical with these. So when you're looking at those two movies currently, and Moana, we're recording on Tuesday morning. They did another 5-something yesterday, so they're up to 231. You're looking at over $300 million of box office, Paul and Thaddeus, that came from two movies that were originally looked to go directly to streaming. And I think it's really important that we understand that streaming and theatrical are not competitive with each other. They need to figure out how they complement each other. And I think, we're still working through that, but this is a perfect case where you have two movies that are literally $300 million so far additive to the box office that wasn't initially going to be there.
That's a
And
great
a couple
point.
of years ago was the opposite. What was originally planned for as theatrical releases were being removed from the theatrical release calendar. So it's sort of an interesting dynamic. If you wind the clock back to when those decisions were being made about Red One and Moana 2 to go theatrical instead of go streaming, where was the industry mindset 12 months ago, 18 months ago, whenever those decisions were being made? Because we were coming out of the pandemic. And of course, there were a lot of stories being written. Paul, you were very familiar with many of them. You were sort of sticking up for the industry at the time about how streaming is really just going to eat the lunch of theatrical releasing completely. And then something changed. Obviously there were some tentpole movies that did very, very well coming out of the tail end of the pandemic. And then the mindsets began to change. So it's interesting.
And I think you're right, Thaddeus, and I think this can lay to rest that notion. Like Mike said, it's streaming and the big screen, the small screen are additive and complementary, not adversarial as everyone wants them to be. And for Dwayne Johnson, this is a great trivia question for our audience. I don't know that an actor has ever had two movies released in the same month that opened to number one, but we'll have to go check.
Yeah, good.
And then also, I looked it up in our ComScore data. To have two back-to-back opening weekends for the 3-day portion over 100 million, it has only happened now. This will be only the fourth time. So in other words, in 2007, Shrek the Third on May 18 opened to 121.7 million. A week later, Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, 128 million. And then 2018, Incredibles 2, and a week later, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. In 2022, Minions, The Rise of Gru, and a week later, another $100 million domestic opener with Thor, Love, and Thunder. And now, of course, Wicked, which opened on the 22nd, had a $100 million opening, and a week later, Moana 2, over its 3 days, also opened to over 100 million. Theatrical is back, I would say.
Well, here, I want to go back, Paul, to your, 300 million, maybe we can get to a $300 million 5-day. I heard several reports of theaters across the country that by the time they got to Sunday, this kind of cracks me up as an old theater guy, and I totally understand it. And that is, the only drink we have, is Cherry Sprite. All the other syrups are gone. We're down to, we don't have red vines. We only have, the hard candy that nobody wants or anything like that. It just goes to show you, I'm sure that as when you're stocking up your theater, you're planning for the busiest weekend you can, but you don't want to overstock. Your parent company will get extremely upset with you if you have too much stuff sitting in the storeroom. So you're trying to plan accordingly, and you're probably, Paul, you're looking at it like, okay, last year we did about 173 million over the 5 days for Thanksgiving. Look, even if we do what we did in 18 and we do the 315 million, I got enough syrup. I got enough Coke. I'm
glad you brought this up, Mike, because that is a nuance of this. We fixate on the box office, but think about those concession sales and the beer and wine as well, and the food and all the other, like our friends at B&B Theaters, they have the the pickleball courts,
Yes.
and they have all that, bowling, I don't know, they have everything there. And for them, they had to think of the supplies. And you're right, like any restaurant or any endeavor like that involves food and drink, you got to figure out like how much do we need to buy in advance. Boy, what a good problem to have, though, actually.
Well, it is totally one of those, gotcha kind of moments where, Paul, we've been talking about this for a year, and that is, I go back to the portfolio approach of the box office, and, it was and I've said this, everyone's sick of me saying it, but I'm going to say it again. The June 14th weekend, we go into it, we were at the worst of the worst. We were down 26%. We're going into a summer where everyone's looking at it going, how the hell are we ever going to compete with what Barbie and Oppenheimer did last year? Meanwhile, Inside Out and Deadpool just came in and said, excuse me, hold my popcorn, people.
Right.
I'll show you how we're going to do it.
Right.
And, you're looking, and where are we, Paul? We're what? We're close to 5%, I think.
Yeah, we're close to, on the year.
On the year.
Perfectly, like you said, like mid-June, the year-to-date deficit versus last year was down like 26%. We talked about that on Ticket to Ride Live at Show East.
Right.
And then a week and a half ago, the Sunday after Wicked and Gladiator opened, the year-to-date box office was down about 10.6%.
Mm-hmm.
You know what a $425 million week gets you?
Right.
It gets you 4 percentage points knocked off the year-to-date deficit in the course of 7-8 days. So we're now at a year-to-date, and it's still a deficit. I get that, but it's at 6.4%.
Mm-hmm.
We went from a double digit down to a single digit let's just call it 10 days. So it shows you how much things can change. And coming out of the summer, it was pretty slow. I mean, after Deadpool and Wolverine, you look at Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice accounted for 41% of the September box office. That's great for Beetlejuice, but you want a lot of movies doing well. Right. Then, of course, we had Wild Robot, which just has been, for me, like the unsung hero of the fall. And so now to have this diversity of content driving all these people to movie theaters, and what does it prove? You can have 3 big blockbusters out there all at once, as long as it wasn't like a musical and a musical and a musical.
Right.
You had an R-rated Swords and Sandals epic. You had a PG-rated musical and a PG-rated animated Disney film. So it totally worked.
Well, how much of this is the fire hose opening all the way up after the end of the labor strikes, right? From
Everything.
2020. So that's the sort of what we're realizing right now. And it took a long time.
Well, I'm sorry to step on you there, Thaddeus, but Paul and I did we did a kind of like a seminar for NATO back in February and NATO California, and we highlighted the fourth quarter, specifically the Thanksgiving corridor. And we were like, once we get here, guys, look out. And again, I don't think any of us thought it was going to be $424 million, but I think we all thought like, this is where we're going to claw back a lot of where it was, because rewind to a year ago at this point, we were being led by, I think it was Hunger Games, Ballad of Songbirds.
That's
and
right.
Was kind of the big dog on campus. But after that, until you got to Wonka, it was slim pickings. And it was, there were some independent films that kind of, filled the gap and were able to help out. But I guess my point is between now and what we see at Christmas. So you're going to have Wicked, which, we haven't even discussed the phenomenon that movie is. Not only are they tapping into a fan base that is rabid and wants to see the movie over and over again, they made one hell of a movie. Mark Platt, when it comes to recognizing how to do a musical, I think it should be pointed out, Mark was the producer on La La Land, which was an amazing film that, I'm very proud that I worked on. Wicked, I don't know what you guys think, but if that's not nominated for Best Picture this year, we got a major problem.
It's got to be a lock for that. I think that, again, this release calendar just set up success in such a profound way. And, there are a lot of big movies still to come, although I was talking, and Mike, you kind of brought this up too, or you did bring this up over the Thanksgiving week. Just a few weeks ago, even getting to $8.5 billion was sort of a pipe dream for the full domestic year, Jan 1 through December 3rd. And now we're pushing it on $8 billion right now, $7.78 billion. Last December did about $770 million. If this December does $1 billion, we'd be at 8.8. Now, I've had some people push back on me saying maybe 8.6, but I don't know. There's no Star Wars movie, at the end. There's no Avatar. There's not a Lord of the Rings. So I don't know. Can we,
Well, I would,
9 billion?
I think 9 billion at this point is probably a stretch. And I've been saying that since CinemaCon to anybody. Like, I think pulling even with, last year, just based on everything that kind of come together is not out of the question anymore, but I think a difficult climb.
Like, didn't this week put it like, whoa, now we are definitely in the running.
My favorite stat of the weekend, Paul, was the one of the 5 days. The 5 days, the $424 million, we outgrossed the entire month of February.
I used that on NBC News Now, Mike.
I love that. That was great. But I guess the point being is, as always with the box office, you don't know until you're into it. And the one thing we don't know is, and I think we have an idea, but we don't know for sure, is how big is Wicked really going to be? Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, what does that total box office look like? And, I have a friend who does research polling, and we were talking about it, and he was more of, it's a musical. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes. The people are going to see it and it's going to play itself out. And I was more like, yeah, I don't think so. I think more like, if you look at this, to me, we're looking at what, 500 million is probably, I hate to say that out loud, but domestic. I think it's probably a $500 million take or better at the end of the day. I mean, they're almost...
Look how long it's going to play, Mike. I mean, these movies that open at this time of year, they generally have long-term playability. And look at Moana 2. That was going to be a streaming play for Disney Plus. Moana 2 could be Disney's $3 billion global grosser, released in 2024.
And they still have Mufasa coming up.
That's right.
And that looks, and again, another movie that was greenlit originally to go directly to platform and now has got a theatrical release. But you have Sonic, you have Mufasa that, is coming up.
Craven.
We have Craven. So, I mean, we still have some dynamos that are going to be entering the marketplace that are going to be adding to, these movies, because Moana's not going anywhere and Wicked's not going anywhere and, Gladiator's not going anywhere. I mean, even the Lionsgate film, Best Christmas Pageant Ever. I mean, that movie is holding in like a rock as well. Like, they're already at $33 million and counting. And while it may not sound like a huge number for that film to perform at that level in this period, I mean, again, you're probably looking at a total gross, approaching $50 million when it's all said and done.
And the final week of any given year can be massive. I mean,
that's exactly right.
Data, you can have I'm going to look at right now live. I'm going to look at the final week of December, 2018, or no, let's look at 2019.
2018 is actually a great one to look at because you had
2018. So we'll go. I'm looking it up right now because again, Mike, the home stretch just got enhanced big time by this past week and the momentum that's going to bring.
When we would have the Hunger Game movies that we would put in November, you got the first bite of the apple through the Thanksgiving corridor, and then you had a little bit of a lull, and then once the Christmas corridor picked up, you had a tremendous amount of box office that would be generated, in those last, 10 days of the year. And Wicked, I keep going back to that one, but that is the one that I think to keep an eye on because you're going to be seeing some tremendous numbers coming out of that movie for those final 10 days. Then, every night's a Saturday night and, it's going to be just like the tote board. That's just going to be like cha-ching, 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 I think every day with that.
In 2018, Aquaman was the number one movie. Then Mary Poppins Returns, Bumblebee, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and The Mule. And those films between December 21st and the 30th, the 10 days was $600 million.
Well, this gets back to what I think, you guys were both commenting on a few minutes ago, which is the movie going is a repetition. You get used to it. If you go to the movies and you have a good time, then you want to go to the movies again and have a good time, or you want to bring your spouse or your kid or your friend to the movies. So even if, you love the movies, so you went to Moana 2 this weekend, now if there's something else which is available to see, which is the studio's responsibility, next weekend, then you go back and you bring your friend. So it really is a volume consideration, I think, is sort of how this all plays out. And I think the studios are starting to do their part.
Yeah. Well, and I had several people tell me over the last couple of weeks that whether it was Wicked or Gladiator, this was the first time they had been back to the theaters since the pandemic.
That's
right. Interesting.
People said that about Top Gun Maverick too. Remember that?
Yeah, that was another one. But Thaddeus, I think you hit the nail on the head, and that is, the work stoppages and everything really slowed down the momentum that had been picking up post-pandemic. It kind of ground everything to a halt. The thing that has happened now is here we are with the, now you've got just this tsunami of studio product. The question, of course, Paul, and I can't even tell you how many emails I've had on, from, these circuits planning next year. What do you project 25?
Right.
Well, for me, when I look at 26, and I think we should do an entire episode looking at 2026. It is insane. I just want to tease it a little bit. When you look at that year, there's like a Batman movie, a Toy Story 5. I think there's a Star Wars movie in there. And the list goes on. And so I think 25 is going to be a big year. I think 26 is a monster that we've been waiting for since 2019. I want to shift gears because we've been going for a bit, but real quick, I want to talk about Christmas Day. I've been harping on this triple feature of Baby Girl, the suspense movie with Nicole Kidman, A Complete Unknown, Timothée Chalamet, the Bob Dylan biopic, and of course, nothing says Christmas like Nosferatu, the Robert Eggers film. And people say that's weird opening a movie like that on Christmas Day. And I always go back to The Exorcist. It opened Wednesday, December 26, 1973. So the day after Christmas, you had The Exorcist. Why not have Nosferatu for Christmas Day? And I love the fact that on Christmas Day, you could see a Lord of the Rings animated film, Sonic the Hedgehog 3. You could see Wicked again. You could see Moana 2, Gladiator 2, or you could see Baby Girl, Nosferatu, A Complete Unknown. This is the best. This is like a menu, a buffet, I should say, of cinematic treats for people at just the right time.
Different genres as well. So there's something for everyone, right?
Yeah, and this is really something, guys, we haven't seen really, to your point, Paul, post-pandemic, and that is every Christmas season has kind of been one movie driving the box office, and now we're looking at, kind of an old school menu option of the buffet of, if you don't like this one, go to this one, and something that you may be going to the theater 3 or 4 times over the Christmas break to see different movies, and this goes back to what Thaddeus was saying on the moviegoing, begots moviegoing, and that, once you start going to see Wicked, for me last week, you just realize the scope and how great moviegoing is and how you can't compare it to anything else. But I did want to bring up, it reminds me of something, Paul, we were talking about this a little bit before we started, and I know we got to wrap up soon, but, Paul's been doing a tremendous amount of television interviews just on various things. And, he doesn't always just talk about, what's going on theatrically. And I know we were talking about our favorite subject before, and that is where the rom-com has evolved to. And you want to touch on that?
Yeah. So I spoke to a journalist today with a major publication for print, actually, in this case, talking about the Hallmark movies and how Netflix is embracing them. And I found out a little bit about Mike today. I didn't know. Mike, like many of us, love these kind of movies, but are embarrassed to tell people about our guilty pleasure of watching these some of them very assembly lines, some of the same actors and talent in them over and over again. Guess what? People and for the small screen, you're right, Mike, this is where the rom-com is migrated to, other than something like Anyone But You. But I mean, really, this, and especially right now, they're so specific. People love the fact that they're cookie cutter. It's like the assembly line. You take a love story from part A and you put it on this model and you change it. And there's a movie on Netflix called Hot Frosty. And it's with Lacey Chabert, and she falls in love with a snowman. And
Could
I'm
it
not
ever
making
work?
that up.
Well, I mean, Paul is correct, 100%. I am a sucker for the Hallmark Christmas movies. My family absolutely makes fun of me for watching some of these. Some are much better than others. I was telling Paul, I watched one on Prime the other night that was okay. Good story. Yet, could have used some work around the edges. I'm not going to name the movie, but but there are some fun ones too. And to your point, the streamers, whether it's, Netflix, Paramount Plus, Hulu, Prime, they've all jumped into the game, and, they have, joined Hallmark in trying to come up with, and some of them have some, Lindsay Lohan has a couple on Netflix.
Lindsay Lohan, Lacey Chabert, like they're known for this stuff.
Yes.
It's cinematic comfort food. It's like the hot cocoa of movies. You just sit back and watch them, and you don't tell anybody that you watch them. But now, Mike, you've told the world.
I've told the world that I watch these. So, anyone who wants
to talk about it.
Anyone who wants to send me their recommendations for what they feel would be a good Hallmark or one of these rom-com Christmas movies, where to find me. So,
how are you going to beat Hot Frosty? How do you beat Hot Frosty?
Well, there's my weekend viewing right now. Is Hot Frosty. I'm gonna have to take a look at that.
That's the poll question of the week. How do you beat Hot Frosty? We'll get that online.
How do you beat Hot Frosty? That's the new drink at one of the fast food restaurants, a Hot Frosty. Real quick though, while we're talking, literally, I'm trying to come up with a mashup for that Christmas Day lineup of Baby Girl, The Complete Unknown, and Nosferatu. I came up with Baby Dylan Ferratu.
Right.
I don't know if that's going to Swiffer the nation, but it's.
And there you go. It's the. But going back to when you look at the menu options for Christmas Day, it just brings a smile to my face because you're sitting there going like, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, people are looking at the theatrical and they're, everyone's claiming people don't want to go to the movies, and I get it. Look, we can talk about. Ticket prices are up. Attendance is, down from where the highs used to be. And, all of that is true. Not going to sugarcoat any of that, but there will always be a place in the movie experience for the cinema. And as every time, someone's trying to pronounce it dead, it finds a way to work itself back. And I think when you look at this weekend specifically, when you have a movie like Moana, as Paul mentioned, the diversity of Wicked, of Gladiator, Red One, best Christmas pageant ever, you're looking at a wide swath of films, something for everybody and everybody responding, and all the different demos, going, and people like, Will on my team, my partner at Paper Airplane, he did the Gladiator Wicked, in a way that no one, I think, has done it. He was down in Orange County for the holidays. He saw Wicked with the family in the morning. He and his son drove 70 miles up to the Chinese theater and then went and witnessed Gladiator in IMAX that evening. And he said it was great. He loved all of it. And,
the walk. Thank you, Will. You walked the walk.
But the point being that, that's what people are doing right now. They're going to see all these different kinds of movies, and they're not, it's not like, okay, I went and saw Wicked and I'm done for, the time being. It's like, okay, now I want to go see Gladiator. Okay, now we're going to go see Moana. And, with these indie films coming out, I think you're just going to.
I'm really excited for those indie films because people who say, oh, I don't like the blockbusters, that's not my cup of tea. You got that trifecta.
Well,
in Ferratu.
In the next episode, though, I do think we need to touch on the indie films and kind of the future of the indie films, because the landscape is changing quite a bit, and there's a lot to discuss on what is really a theatrical indie film and what is not.
And Mike, we're actually going to have another episode within, hopefully a short amount of time. I know we're going to wrap it here. I think we should wrap it here. But I want to give Thaddeus the last word because I'm telling you, trying it, and literally on the screen where we're on this platform, Thaddeus is stuck in between me and Mike. And so Thaddeus will give you the last word. You can do the outro and, take us out on this Turkey Day edition of Ticket to Ride. It's been great, guys. But we'll let Thaddeus, you take us out.
I'm so delighted to have such positive news for us all to share and talk about and share with all of our listeners. And exhibitors are sort of fist pumping, all the way to Christmas because of, the experience that they as businesses have gone through over the last couple of years. So it's sort of a good way to sort of coast to the end of the year and on an upswing with the box office climbing and with, crowds in theaters. And one other thing that I just wanted to add to that is that exhibitors are making their 2025 and 2026 plans as well. And exhibitors are part of the equation here. Obviously, the studios, the product, the fans, the movie-going enjoyment. But the exhibitors have to host the party. And the exhibitors are making their investments based on a positive outlook going forward for 2025 and 2026 as well. And they know that they need to up their game with what it is that they have to offer when people show up at the theater. And it's expensive to do so. So these sort of positive box office weeks really make a big difference in capital investment and just sort of, it's a mutually sort of reinforcing cycle that we all are in. So that's something, that's the exhibitor take on it anyways.
Love that, Thaddeus. Thank you. You perfectly took us out of this episode that will be just the beginning of many more. So thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Thanks, guys. This was fun.
Great seeing everybody. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving and looking forward to a strong holiday season.
Yeah,
thank
excellent.
you. Mike Polydorus, Paper Airplane, Thaddeus Bouchard, Screendollars, Paul DeGarabidi, and that's me for ComScore for Ticket to Ride Turkey Day Edition. Hope you all enjoyed it. We'll see you next time.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, guys.